Tonight we get to welcome Kelly Burtick as she shares her story. Come on up, Kelly. Can you welcome her tonight? Last week, Kelly, I told everyone Kelly Cash was coming to share. But tonight I heard you refer to yourself as Kelly Cash. So I don't feel as bad. You forgot to. But hey, we're glad you're here. You haven't been married long, but you're already matching with your husband. So
We're
that
still the
happens.
newlywed phase, so we
Yeah,
match. Yeah.
yeah. Kelly, I'll let you introduce yourself. Give us some context about your life, your upbringing. How long you been in Raleigh? How long have you been at Bayleaf? Introduce yourself.
Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kelly Burtick, although some of y'all might know me better as Kelly Cash. I'm recently married to my husband, Jay, and we just have been married for 6 months. So we are enjoying this newlywed stage of life. And I've grown up in Raleigh, was born here and raised here. And I actually grew up here at Bayleaf. So my parents joined in the 1980s. And so it's been really cool to see the church grow. I think I was one of the first babies in the nursery in the 80s. So it's been really interesting just to see the different generations that have come through here. And not only did I grow up here, I actually work here. So I have actually been on staff. It'll be 15 years coming up in October.
That is awesome, Kelly. And I love having you working here and being a secretary here with us. And you're a huge UNC fan, right?
No.
Oh. Oh. What pack, right? Hey, so bring us into your world a little bit, Kelly. We want to know your story. Start at the beginning. Give us the early stages of life. Tell us what shaped you. What were your influences? What was what kind of home did you grow up in? When did you start following Jesus? Focus in on the early part of your life.
Okay. So I know when people look at me, they can obviously see that the Lord made me differently. And when I was about the age of 2 or 3, I was diagnosed with a rare type of dwarfism called SED. Has a very long name. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it all, but it's a rare dwarfism, and it has to do primarily with my spine and limited flexibility and mobility. And at the time, my parents didn't quite know how tall I was going to be. The doctors had told them to expect as short as 2 feet or taller. They just didn't quite know. And so I did end up growing to be now 4 foot 2 feet, 2 inches, which is pretty tall in the little people world. And so they just decided that they were just going to raise me as normally as possibly could. And we just made adjustments along the way. They just always instilled that I was fearfully and wonderfully made. And a lot of little people, and little people is the politically correct term for people of short stature, a lot of little people in their childhood have to have a lot of surgeries. I was very blessed that I never had to have any surgeries related to being little. So I was very lucky to grow up in a Christian home. My parents discipled me at a very young age. We were always here at the church on Sundays and Wednesday night suppers and all sorts of things. And my parents were always heavily involved in me and my brother's childhood. We were chaperones on different events. And one summer after VBS, that is when I became a Christian. And I think I was around the age of 5. And I don't remember all the words that I said, but I do remember that tugging and that nagging at my heart. And so grew up here and continued to thrive in our student ministry and just continue to make lifelong friends that I still get together with now. We call ourselves the old school Bayleafers. And so really was discipled then, and some of my fondest memories of high school was here at this church doing youth groups and summer camps. And I was teased growing up some, but I would never really say I was bullied. I think people were just more curious, little children. And, as I had friends that were playing sports and cheerleading, and I wasn't able to do those types of things, but I could still be on the sidelines and encouraging them and supporting them. And so really in high school is where I had to kind of understand that my physical circumstances weren't going to change, but my mental outlook on that could. And so that's really where I had to really just learn to start being content in the Lord, and that I may never know this side of heaven why he made me the way he did, but that's okay. So after I graduated high school, I attended Meredith College, still in Raleigh, and just continued to thrive there. I had such a wonderful 4 years there, really felt like I came into my own, did a lot of different leadership opportunities there, and I was just really sad when I had to graduate and join the grown-up world.
Yeah, and all God's people said amen, right? So so great. You've gotten up to a college point. Now let's get on the other side of college, life as an adult. At this point, you have a college degree. You're a follower of Jesus. You've adjusted well to life as a little person. It's not like that held you back. I mean, you're still moving forward. Bring us into your world then, when you entered into adult life and started living. I mean, where are you at spiritually? What were some struggles that came your way? Bring us into that picture.
Okay. So after college, I moved back home and just didn't quite know what my next step was going to be. And so I ended up getting offered a job here at the church. And so I started working here in the fall of 2006 and just continued to work here. And a lot of my friends from college were kind of all scattered about. And so I was looking for a new social outlet and became really involved with the college and singles group here at Bayleaf. And the Lord really blessed me with really strong friendships and continued to be discipled, was in small groups. I wasn't the type that was going downtown after work, so I wanted to have a new group of friends that we could do things after work and on the weekends. And so that was just a wonderful blessing that I was not expecting when I moved back home. And so my 20s was working, kind of figuring out, those types of things, and was still really involved here. And then my 20s weren't bad by any means. They weren't overly exciting either, but I had a few highlights in my 20s. Was able to buy a house, became an aunt, and was in wedding after wedding after wedding for a lot of my friends, which I love doing that. But as the years went by, as I kind of started approaching my late 20s and early 30s, I really started just becoming discontent with where I was in life. I wasn't married. I wasn't dating. Now, when I did turn 34, I did go on a really good blind date, and that turned out really well. But other than that, it was I felt like I was just living the most boring life ever. It was just, going to work and coming home and being so tired on the weekends that I was just, watching Shark Tank and Dateline on Fridays, and that's just kind of what my life was. And it was a struggle because we live in such this Instagram filtered world where you can make anything exciting. And I just started really comparing myself to other people and just really became discontent where I was. And, as years went by and as I would get these Christmas cards from my friends and I would see their growing families and I was just so happy for them, but, my heart ached because I just felt like I was that much further behind in life. And I kind of started going down just a negative pattern of thinking. And I remember reading this quote by Paul Tripp, and he said, "If God doesn't rule your mundane, then he doesn't rule you, because that's where we live." And that really just spoke to me, just because I think I knew that. I just needed to be reminded of it. And I needed to stop comparing myself to other people. Comparison really is the thief of joy. And I really had to combat that negative thinking during that time. So that's kind of where I was in my early to mid 30s, was just really struggling with discontentment, what is going to be my next step in life, and that type of thing.
Yeah, so your story isn't one of, crazy, I fell off the deep end. It's more of just, man, I didn't know, I couldn't find joy in the daily routines of life. Anybody experience contentment, right? I relate to that. And you, I think, hit it on the head when you said we live in this Instagram culture, right? We live in a culture where we compare ourselves and we try to appear better than we are. And so it leads to a bunch of people feeling like they're missing out or they haven't, achieved what they're supposed to achieve. And so I think, Kelly, what your story is showing is that you were fighting to have joy in the Lord in that and just the daily routines. And that's we're all in that together, right? So bring us up closer to now. Look at the past 5 years. How have you seen God work in that time where you struggled to find contentment in the ordinary? Has he delivered you out of that? Are you still struggling in that? Or how have you seen God at work, in the past 3 to 5 years in your life?
So I think all of us struggle whether you're married or single with discontentment. I mean, I think this past year with the pandemic has been an example of all that. And I know for me, it's still a struggle. I mean, it comes and it ebbs and flows at times. But for me, when I was really dealing with just discontentment and just really ungratefulness, a friend challenged me to keep a gratitude journal. And what she suggested was just leave it open on your kitchen table, and every day just write something down that you're grateful for. It can be just the simplest thing. And then at the end of the week, look back at it. And that really did help me in a tangible way to take the focus off of me and to just more have a grateful heart, because we aren't promised tomorrow. And I really had to pray to the Lord to use me for today. What do you have for me today? And I'm such a big planner, and I want to know what's coming next. And the Lord really spoke to me and just reminded me, I'm going to give you your daily bread. Just focus on this next step.
Amen. And those who've been around you for a long time have watched the faithfulness of God in your life and seen him provide, right? Now, as this will be our last question, you've been here a long time, Kelly. I've been at this church a long time. There are other people who've grown up in this church. What would you say to us tonight as your church family? How can you encourage us to form genuine, authentic community, which is something you had, in college and before college? How can you encourage us to form community that is not based on current life stage, but is including everybody in all of life stages in a way that leads to joy and satisfaction and contentment?
I know for me, when I was single, and even now being newlywed, being in community is so important. And when I think back to those days where I was struggling, especially walking through singleness in my mid-30s, being involved in my friends' lives and their families' lives and their children's lives, that just meant the world to me. Whenever I would get invited to a birthday party or a baptism, it just made me feel included. So I think my biggest takeaway would be to include different generations in your life. There's certainly a time and a place to be with people that are in your same stage of life, but I'm a big believer that genuine friendships are formed when vulnerabilities are shared, and that only happens when you're doing life together. I can remember being with some of my friends who had small children, and they could tell me all day how hard it was to be a young mom with little ones. But until I was in their lives and I could see the daily struggle, it just resonated with me a lot more. And likewise, they could see how isolating it was for me at times to be single, because they were so removed from that they kind of forgot. So living in community and really seeking out those friendships and relationships, that would be the biggest thing I would say.
Amen. Yeah, and I think we could work on that, but I also see Bayleaf doing a good job at that as well with the multi-generations and whatnot. But that's a good word of encouragement to us. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing your story. That's powerful. God is using it. Let's thank Kelly for sharing with us tonight.